So today we're gonna do the Blender challenge.
Void Monolith.
And well, the first step I always like to do is outside of Blender. Just a quick sketch of ideas. And immediately when I think of a Void Monolith, I think of some sort of obelisk, just a generic Egyptian obelisk shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. The other thing is we need a good placement. I don't want to do too much of a environment, but luckily this is a void monolith. So floating out in a void. I also want to put like these kind of broken fragments. And maybe some floating islands. And then for the far off background, I just want to do like a swirling shape, like behind it's emanating from the obelisk itself. Okay. And then we can move on to Blender. So here we go. This video is affiliated with Contra. If you are a Blender artist looking to land clients, you need to check them out. Unlike other platforms, Contra has a 0% commission, so you keep 100% of what you earn for your 3D work. Whether you want to use it just for invoicing, contracting, or as a social platform, it's all up to you. I highly recommend upgrading to Contra Pro. It moves your portfolio to the top of search results, and you get priority access to jobs before they're made public to non-pro members. Click the link in the description below to set up your portfolio and start earning using Blender today. So now we're in Blender, and if you want your reference image right in front of you, you can always go into the add menu, add the image here as reference background, mesh plane, empty. I prefer mesh plane. I'm not trying to get it exact, so I don't need it as background or reference, but it's always your decision. I have it up on a second monitor here, so I'll be referencing it there, and I'll point out the parts. So of course, the very first part we want to do is the monolith, or the obelisk that we have designed here. The thing with the daily challenges is you don't really need to follow them exactly. I'm not really looking for that. It's only to give you a source of creativity and just do something throughout the day. So I'm gonna go ahead and bevel this. This will be the step region, as you see down below. Custom profile. We want 3 steps. However, this doesn't necessarily count the very bottom sidewall. So I'm gonna minus it by 1, so 2 steps. And then we want to do times 2 to get the number of segments. And then in our custom profile, we want steps. And then we can go ahead and adjust until it looks right. I want the base that it's going to sit on to be fairly wide. So I'm going to go ahead and move that down. And as you can see there, we have our steps. Quick, dirty, easy. Grab another cube. And then we can scale that to fit proper on that step. I want it to be fairly wide. I don't want it to go too high up, so I'll go ahead and click this. move it on Z, probably that height, because I don't want it too tall. I want it nice and thick. Lift up the top here, scale 0, and of course merge by distance. Another thing with obelisks are that the tip here is usually tapered slightly, so I'm going to go ahead and select that loop and just scale that in. So now that is our basic obelisk. Fast, dirty, easy. Wait, I already said that. So let's go ahead and make that ground it's sitting on. It's not too big of a rock, and we have other rocks floating out there. So let's start with the ground plane. I'm gonna do this by using my quick method of making terrain. I don't necessarily need it to look real, just terrain. So I add a single vert. If you don't have that, you may have to look in the add-ons for the extra objects add-on. And I'm gonna go to ocean modifier, and that will replace the geometry with this. We can use this alone. However, I want to increase the size to give us some room, and the resolution we need to increase to maybe 14. It doesn't matter. That gives us a better definition. I think if I go to wireframe, I can see that resolution, make sure that looks okay. I'll go ahead and just +2 on that. 16. That seems right. Go ahead and make sure that the scale is applied in case that resolution needs it. Scale is applied. We're all good. We can apply this, and then we can do the same thing for the downward rock area. So let's go ahead and single vert, ocean, and we're going to go ahead and 16, increase the size. We want more waves, taller waves, so we're gonna go ahead and increase the scale of the waves and the choppiness to give it kind of a sharp rock pattern. Let me check the side to see if it's deep enough. There's a very deep region here. That's pretty much the max size it will go to. I want to switch around the random seed until we get something close to coming down in the center. It seems to really want to be... That seems good. Let's go ahead and apply this. And we're going to do some proportional editing, sharp, and I want to make sure, oh, it looks like proportional editing is separate from the object view now. That's pretty cool. Interesting. So I want to make sure connected is on. This will just be a influence of connected vertices rather than a general radius. It doesn't matter too much when everything is connected, but you know how it is. I actually think that's a good distance for that. So what I'm gonna do is select these vertices here, just along the edges where it hits the side, and I'll Z grab influence up and just get a good region up above the ground. We do want it to be a little bit more smaller. So I'll go ahead and select that. We can just change that influence as needed. Make sure the bottom is a good distance on the ground. Let's go ahead and pull it just slightly under. Get a good sharpness on that. And then we want smaller pockets just to play with. I'm going to go ahead and lift these regions as well to get them above so we don't have to deal with them. And then we can figure out smaller regions to cut off as well for the floating islands and little rocks floating out there. So for now, just lift the corners, lift any rogue pools you see. Okay. And then we can do just as I said, where we come back in, influence down, try to get some rogue islands going. Doesn't have to be where they are on the drawing. Just as long as it looks natural. And then I'm gonna do a smaller influence over here just to get a few rocks. Okay. Now we can just do a Boolean operation. I'm pretty sure... Okay, manifold is going to want the objects to be solid. So I'm just going to go in here and extrude down. And then on here, I will extrude straight up. That is fine. And we just want intersection. Apply, and we can delete our base layer here. So now we have a bunch of small rocks. I'll go ahead and delete this one over here. That's a little too random. And then let me go ahead and get my view on the selected so I'm rotated proper. The next thing we want to do before we mess with the islands is just set up our camera. Make sure our camera is where we want it. Easiest way to do that is go into the camera, view, camera to view, and we can then move around the scene as we normally do. Another thing real quick is I wanted this to be vertical. So in my render settings, I'm going to switch this to 1080. To 1920, and then we can work from there. Let's see. These islands might be slightly too big, but we can work it out. I want this basically in center. And then for these islands, let's go ahead and move this basic one. I'm going to turn off the proportional, and for the edit position, I'm going to put it to 3D cursor, so it's always moving around here. So I'm going to actually scale this one down, probably rotate it. I like that point over here. And then I'll move it back. It does kind of feel like the rocks don't go far enough under, especially when you see it like that. Before I start moving around again, I should probably uncheck the camera to view. And then, yeah, so this isn't really how deep I thought it would be. So I'll just move this down a bit. Making sure I'm not messing with the very top plane. We can always jump back, see how it's doing. I'm just doing Shift Z on here to move it on the XY plane alone. All I'm looking for is just a good silhouette. And that seems fine. I'm not going to care too much about the other rocks, but there are two over here. These are going to be much smaller objects that kind of sit at the same plane as this. They don't necessarily need to be rotated in perfect perspective here. I'm trying to find a good angle. Maybe smaller. I didn't even do that. I'm pressing L, by the way, to select all of the fully connected. Let's go ahead and grab this one over here. And then this one we want to kind of move out in the distance. I'm going to tilt it slightly towards us. And then same thing with this one over here. And I'm going to lift this one up just to... Bam. And then you can see weird stuff going on the side here, but if you just do a auto smooth, it pretty much fixes itself. Of course, our base kind of goes a little too far into the ground now, so let's go ahead and just fix that. I didn't intend for that, just want this hide. Cool. And then the final step, well, second to final, other than the background itself, is taking chunks out of the obelisk. So the final step of modeling. This is going to be relatively easy. So we have our obelisk here. I'm going to add a icosphere. I like giving it 3 division. And then I will just move it into a spot. I know there is one towards the middle I put on that thing. Let's say roughly this deep. I don't want it to go too far deep into it. Turn back on proportional. Just grab a vertice and let me get the right influence on it. There we go. Grab a vertice and just kind of pull it up and down. I'm not going to be too precise with this. Maybe some on the inside moving. The idea is just to give it non-uniform cutting power. So when we cut it out, it looks like an actual chunk. There we go. So now what we can do is duplicate that. So boop. And I'll go ahead and hide that duplication really quick. And we want this to, or this to get cut by the first icosphere. So boop, manifold, and intersection, or yeah, difference, I guess. And then when we hide the icosphere, it will show the chunk taken out of it. We actually want to not have that influence just yet, because we need this icosphere. Correct. There we go. We need this icosphere to do the same. However, we need to apply this before we actually take the bite out. So we're going to do intersection and then apply. And then we can pull this out, rotate it a little. The origin is down here, so I'm going to do, what is one of these buttons? That's not it. I will figure this out. I thought it was, okay, I'm gonna do the find. So, cursor to active. Okay, fine, whatever. I'll do the second best thing. Option, origin, and I'll just move the origin itself to the rock. I don't care if it's perfect. It don't need to be perfect. Hooray. Of course, if you do want it perfect, you can always do like a vertice snap with the origin. So you can see how it just snaps to one of these. Boop. And then, yeah, we can rotate it. Just make sure. And then we can go back to that original icosphere. And we have here, or the obelisk, I guess. Whatever we had it on. And then turn that back on. We don't need to apply that, but that gives us a perfect cutout. And I'm just gonna go through and do the exact same to all the other pieces I was gonna break off. Speedrun, go! Okay, so I got all the shards done. As you may have seen for this back shard, I didn't bother doing the cutout because the camera cannot see that. The next thing I want to do, I'm imagining this is kind of like a purplish place, you know, void is purple, go hand to hand. So for the ground here, we're gonna do some texturing, shader. We're gonna do something like super basic. We're gonna go name this ground. Let's go ahead and get a good thing going here. We can do 2 shaders going into a mix. And then the mix, of course, goes into here. We want the mix to be based on the normal direction. I'm going to put this to blue and put this to red just so I can see if it's working or not. I think we want dot. Okay, and then the input is going to be a texture coordinate. Just the normals of this. And we can see that the underground here is the rock. So for the overground, I want kind of a light purplish color. And then the rock is going to go for a more subtle, desaturated, dark blue. And that's it for the ground. Quick, easy way to differentiate. Of course, you can change the material grader if you want, but I'm going for simplified here. Next up is the obelisk and friends. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do ob. This one's going to be a lot more complicated here. But let me just make sure all of these get assigned. I believe I can do a right click and there should be a copy material to selected over in the materials section. And I'm gonna pin this for now because I want some edge detection on here, so I don't want the orange. So I'm gonna pin that so I can see this. Okay, going back, I found more information. I do want the ambient occlusion. So let's go ahead and we want AO in here. And then we actually want to flip this. I'm gonna also reduce this to 0.5 so it's less of an influence. Let's just figure out the exact. And it's still only giving me the influence of the negative, not the positive. What am I? Oh, inside. There we go. So I was doing it correct before. That's exactly. And then switch this from inside to outside. And then that gives us the outside at the same rate. And then we want to color mix. So now we can do a mix shader on here. And then let me just make sure it's influenced in the right spot. It obviously is not. So invert, boom. And then we want this to be basically black. I want no roughness. I want no IR. I'm gonna actually put this slightly to the blue hue to match with the surrounding purple. And then this as well will be a purpley hue. I'm just going to play around with this until it feels good. I like that. Still don't quite like how that edge up there is being treated, but I think that works pretty well. I think it works pretty well. So as you see on the sketch as well, we have a rune language. So what I'm actually going to do is, okay, so I cheated a little bit by going into Affinity to create the runes. I didn't want to bother with UV. It's not going to be worth it. So we just want a transparent, an emission. Of course, we want this to go into a mix. And the image itself will be the factor for that mix. So the other thing is we want the color here of this, and we want this to be the same color. There we go. And then of course we want this on surface, so face project. I want aligned rotation to target and face. So project center and just control. So we can pull it in and out just slightly. And there is our rune. Now it is going to act a little weird on the edges. That is because we want to go from clip, or we want clip. What? Try repeat. Repeat will get rid of those edges. So that's our runes. This is our stuff. And now we need a background. How are we going to do a background? Very simply. We're going to screw it. So to screw the background, I'm just going to do a simple mesh plane. I'm going to do / on the keyboard to only look at the mesh plane. Move it to the side here. We want increment on here, align rotation off. Z, perfect. And we're gonna take the modifier we want to screw. And we want to have a distance on here. It's not exactly what I'm looking for. I just want a single plane. Let's try this. We're gonna do a array. And we want a... is there just like a spiral curve? I think there might be... Hold on, let me check the properties. I think there might be extra curves. Extra mesh objects. Okay, let's try curve. Let's just do a path because it would be the easiest. So, for this, I'm gonna do Z. Let's just get these into position. We just want to make a simple spiral shape with these positions. Don't worry about the way it looks right now. Smooth, connected only. If we lift this up, the rest will follow. And we could just kind of continue on like that. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten it. We're going to do this a few times. Let me actually turn the snap on to make it a little easier. Just do this a few times. Just a few curves. And we are out of here. That should be more than enough. So it does look like the end might need to be towards the inside. I'm not going to be able to grab that end just yet, but let's go ahead and do a pull up. You can see as I expand the influence, it will pull the spiral naturally. We can grab the inside now. Just go ahead and turn that off and just make sure it aligns with the spiral. And then I want to do 3D cursor on this top one, influence, and I want to do a wide berth. That's a quick way to get a wide spiral. So from here, we're going to do curve, select our curve, and just increase the count until it like matches, I guess. I kind of like the scaly look of it, to be honest. Is there a merge? Merge geometry input. I don't know. Distance, I guess. It looks like it does twist a bit. We may have to influence the twisting of the curve. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm not sure. Was it Control A? There's a way to Shift A? in the side menu, we can control the tilt. Tilt. Does kind of mean... Yeah. I am seeing a bit of a wonkiness with the spiral, but it does add a bit of character. I'm not, like, worried about it being perfect, but I'm gonna go ahead and group these. BG background. And I'm gonna press the slash to get everything back. Select these two, rotate it, camera view. And I'm gonna push this back and scale it to scale in the plane to get a better influence. And for the material, I just want a straight color. We're gonna do color mix actually, and that will give us two colors to play with. Plug that straight in. For the factor, I want a gradient linear factor, and the vector will be this. I'm going to turn one of these blocks so we can make sure it's working. I also want to make sure it's only on its z-axis. And then we can check rendered. That's going to be black in most areas. That's fine. I actually want the cycles. GPU. I know for Mac, sometimes I need to go into the system, uncheck this, and then recheck it before it will actually use it. So, still a bit weird, but that's kind of what it has to do. Rendering kernels. Okay, so it's working on the kernels right now. Area. I'm just gonna get one big area light. Or actually, let's get a sun. And we can make the sun very large angle. 90. Oh, it's because the AO is affecting it. Is there a way I could tell this not to be AO'd? I have no idea. I'm just gonna align it in view. It's not like there's any shading on it, and I'm not gonna worry about it. And there is my render. Thank you for joining me for the Monolith of the Void.